What's going on, YouTube? So we have an Apple event that's coming October 18th, and we're expecting to see new M1X MacBook Pros. Now, I currently use iPad Pro only. It's my daily driver. I'm going to talk about what device I have a little bit later. But I'm going to be talking about my top 3 things that I'd need to see in the new MacBook Pros in order for me to use it as a daily driver to make that switch. So we're going to talk about it before we get started. Guys, hit the subscribe button and click the bell so you don't miss as we cover your favorite tech and video games. I'm Chris Grant Jr. It's the Grant Geek Show. All right, so the Apple event invitations have gone out, Apple Unleashed, and there's just like this warp speed type of effect on the Apple logo. It looks like they're in space as well. So definitely speed is something that's going to be coming to this event. But that's not actually the number one thing that I need to see on the new MacBook Pro in order for me to make the switch. So starting off with my number one thing then, it's actually the display. So right now I'm in 120 hertz refresh rate land. I've got the iPhone 13 Pro Max here, 120 hertz refresh rate, and the 2018 512 gigabyte 12.9 inch iPad Pro, which is also 120 hertz true tone display. And I just can't, it's too noticeable now when I go to anything that's 60 hertz or lower. And so seeing that implementation into the MacBook would be amazing. But that's not the only display thing that I would need to see in order to switch over. It would also be mini LED. We know they're not going OLED. That's kind of why they brought XDR technology from their big $6,000 display down to the M1 iPad Pro. And I think that was more due to scheduling. But now it looks like they're finally ready to implement it into the Mac. And so 120 hertz refresh rate screen as well as mini LED would definitely be the number one thing where I'd be like, okay, I can make the switch. It's not actually performance though. The 2018 iPad Pro creams through everything. Usually in productivity and stuff like that, I do video editing, music production, and all kinds of content creation, photo editing, and stuff like that. And it's more than powerful enough to do all that without any lag or delay. And it's mostly the learning curve that people have to get used to when switching to iOS because it's a different operating system. But once you get it, the iPad is just as capable as the Mac. Okay, so the second thing I'd need to see on these new MacBook Pros in order for me to make the switch from the iPad is going to be ports. So, and this is due to weight and just the amount of portability this device is going to have. So I'm looking, I really think I might go with the 16-inch depending on if it has ports or whatever, but if not, maybe the 14-inch. And this is because with the 2018 iPad Pro and newer, it already has USB-C. The M1 now having USB-C Thunderbolt. And so typically when I'm not out and about docked, I have to use a USB-C hub or a dongle in order to get more ports, USB or Ethernet or an SD card reader. And that's fine because the dongles are like lightweight and small nowadays, and it doesn't take too much to get started with those. But when you're talking about a MacBook Pro, you're already adding a permanent keyboard and mouse, which is going to add to weight and kind of the awkwardness of using the device. You can't just pull it out like a book and start working. And so if I'm already adding those permanent fixtures, those features, I'm not going to want to add additional dongles and USB-C hubs in order to use USB and SD card reader and stuff like that. So my hope is that we're getting HDMI and SD card reader at the minimum, okay? Because I'd also like to see a USB-A port, maybe. I don't know. They're too thin at this point, I think, to do that. But we'll go with USB-C, HDMI, and SD card reader. So the third and final thing I would need to see is actually performance. So it is on the list. It's just not number one. That was display. But like I said, the iPad Pro has had no issues in terms of performance for what I do on a daily basis, and even more difficult tasks and stuff like that. But in order for me to make the switch, the M1X MacBook Pro would have to be insane, bananas, bonkers, leaps and bounds in terms of performance than the iPad and any Mac that we've seen before. So we're hearing about 32 gigs of RAM, up to 64, maybe even 32 graphics cores, which is just like hard to think. But when you're thinking about kind of a quantum leap that the M series Apple made chips are, we have to just get used to a whole new set of numbers. So in terms of RAM and stuff, the cores are going up to what would be RAM numbers, 32, maybe 64 core graphics cards. RAM will start going up, you know, all these different things we have to get used to. But yeah, if the performance is enticing enough and it can just cream through things better than M1, then I would be foolish to say I wouldn't be enticed by that. But all three of those things would have to come together in these new M1X MacBook Pros in order for me to make the switch from the iPad Pro to the MacBook Pro. So let me know if these are your important things. I'd love to know your top thing that you'd need to see in the new MacBook Pro in order to make a switch from whatever you're using now. I'm also looking to get together with Bram Shank to do kind of a predictions right before the event. So guys, get subscribed and click the bell so you don't miss that. And of course, we'll be having reaction and coverage of the event. So you don't want to miss. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to stay tuned as we cover your favorite tech and video games. I'm Chris Grant Jr. It's the Grant and Geek Show.